Hi guys, my name's Kristen and this is my channel, Kristen is Fully Booked. Today I'm going to be sharing a video with some of my favorite confessions of love from books. But not just any confession. This isn't just an I love you moment. This is a situation. A man confesses and tells his backstory of love and how long he's been in love with this person, and it's like this beautiful moment where while you as a reader have suspected that he has these feelings all along, he is now sharing everything with the main character, and these are pretty beautiful. I have 4 of my top favorites, and then I have 2 sort of honorable mentions. There's a bit of a glare coming through the window or bouncing off a neighbor's window, so it is what it is for that. I have to start with my all-time favorite confession of love, which was sort of the inspiration for this video and is, I think, single-handedly the most romantic thing that I have ever heard, seen, witnessed. And I read it when I was 16, so it's been a while and nothing has lived up to the moment of first reading this love letter by Frederick or Captain Wentworth in Persuasion by Jane Austen. Persuasion was Jane Austen's last fully completed novel that was actually published after her death. It follows Anne Elliot and Captain Wentworth. It is a second chance at love. When Anne and Captain Wentworth first meet, they fall in love and become quickly engaged. However, there's a really significant difference in their classes. Anne is a quite wealthy young woman, and at the time, Captain Wentworth was not a captain and I think was pretty low in the Navy. Anne is then persuaded to break the engagement by her family and close family friends. The book actually starts about 7 or 8 years later when Anne is a 27-year-old old maid and Captain Wentworth's family moves back into her neighborhood. She is then forced to see Captain Wentworth years after she tossed him to the side and broke off their engagement. He, in the meantime, has risen in the ranks within the Navy and is sort of on the hunt for a wife. The most perfect moment in the book takes place towards the end when Captain Wentworth and Anne are starting to be a lot more friendly. They are in the same drawing room and Anne is talking to someone else about the differences in how men and women love. She's kind of making the case that women are more tender and love longer, sort of thing. Wentworth leaves Anne a letter. He's writing a letter while she's having this conversation, and then he kind of secretly leaves her this letter so that no one else sees. And oh my gosh, it is the most romantic thing. Basically, when he's overhearing her have this conversation, he writes this letter. So you're reading not only a confession of love, but he's also sort of reacting to the conversation that she's having. Honestly, every other romantic confession pales in comparison to the perfection of this letter. Reading the letter in itself is quite beautiful, but I think you have to read the book to fully grasp the intensity of emotion in this love letter. The next confession of love that I also think is amazing comes from Red, the character Red, in Daughter of the Forest by Juliette Marillier. Daughter of the Forest is a historical fantasy retelling of the Seven Swans fairy tale. Our main character, Sorcia, has 6 brothers who are cursed and turned into swans by an evil sorceress. Sorcia is then the only person who can break this curse by completing an extremely painful long task, all while maintaining complete silence. We're talking no gasping, no laughing, no loud crying, no speaking, nothing. At some point along the way, Sorcia is taken in by Red, who is the Lord Hugh of Harrowfield and is technically her family's enemy. Red then sort of becomes Sorcia's protector, despite the fact that Sorcia has to remain completely silent and has been traumatically hurt in the past. The two begin to really understand each other and develop a deep sense of trust and connection. While Red's feelings are clear to both the reader and Sorcia, Sorsha has a reason to doubt that they are real feelings. Without getting into spoilers, the confession scene takes place in the form of Red telling a story. He presents it as such that it's not exactly his story, although it's pretty obvious to everyone that it is his story, and he is blindfolded and has no idea that Sorsha is in the room until about halfway through. This is a really, really beautiful confession. He tells his whole story and sort of his point of view of the time period while Sorsha is under his protection, and let's just say it ends pretty well. The next confession of love is from West in the book Fable. Fable was left on an island to fend for herself when she was quite young, and she's trying to save enough money to board passage off of the island to track down her father. She ends up getting passage on the ship Marigold, which is captained by West. The relationship between Fable and West is a very slow burn, despite the fact that it takes place in a relatively short 350-page book. And it is all about the actions that are completed by the characters involved, and less so about the words that are being said to each other. This is a very subtle romance that is written between the lines of the book. West's confession is a confession in every sense of the word. In this world, no one really can trust each other. No one shares details about their lives with each other because there's this overarching feeling that anyone will betray you at any given moment. And again, without getting into spoilers, West chooses to place his trust in Fable and makes a lot of confessions and tie it back into the rest of the book. I listened to this book as an audiobook the first time I read it, and I think I was sitting there with my jaw dropped. I could not believe that it was happening. I actually thought that we weren't going to see the romance come into fruition until the second book in the novel, but boy, was I wrong. The second book comes out on March 16th, called Namesake, and I am very excited to follow up with this one. The last confession that I want to share is a little bit of a spoiler because it is the second book in a series, and that is The Court of Mist and Fury from the ACOTAR series. If you haven't read this series yet and you don't want to be spoiled, or you haven't already been spoiled from just like everything on BookTube and Bookstagram and BookTok, feel free to skip ahead. I'll put in time slots down in the description below. But I won't mention any names, I guess, just in case. This relationship had a very great enemies to friends to lovers arc, and I personally love the scenes where they are establishing more of a friendship. It is definitely one of those books where you can see so much more on rereads, even if you did sort of suspect where it was going, as I did. This scene takes place where the main character, Feyre, is very upset with this male love interest because she found out that he was withholding certain important information from her. He tracks her down and goes on to tell his story spanning years before they even met, where just flashes and images of her were essentially his salvation in the darkest time period of his life. And it put into perspective his motivations in a lot of scenes that felt really questionable at the time when they were happening. While I enjoyed the friendship component of this particular relationship up until this point, I will say that this moment single-handedly won me over for this male character. And now for my honorable mentions. One of these books is one that I thought was really great in the moment. I just don't see it having maybe a longevity in terms of lasting in my memory for very long. And the second one is less of a story and more of just a perfect mic drop love confession. The first one comes from the book The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. This is an enemies to lovers romance where the main character has to go on the honeymoon of her sister, a bride, and the groom's brother, who she hates. In order to not get kicked out of the hotel, the two have to pretend that they are the married couple, and it leads to a lot of really funny moments, sort of like enemies to lovers, but also fake dating. Without getting into spoilers, the confession of feelings by the male love interest, Ethan, was really great. And it goes to show you how first impressions can go awry and how you are acting can change how someone else perceives you and views you for years. The final honorable mention comes from the Folk of Air series, and this one is also not the first book in the series, so fair warning for spoilers. This takes place in the third book, the third and final book of the trilogy, The Queen of Nothing. This is a young adult fantasy novel that has a pretty strong romantic subplot that is an enemies to lovers arc between human Jude and the Fae Prince Cardan. This is the third book in the series, so I won't go into specific details. This is one relationship where their origins and one comment made by Cardan very early on makes Jude doubt the feelings involved, despite the fact that it is very clear to all of the readers at this point. The great thing about this confession is that it is the most perfect mic drop moment. There's a really tense political situation going on, and Cardan essentially confesses his feelings and then immediately, before Jude can respond or react in any way, puts them in a situation where other people are around and she feels like she can't respond. It was so perfect. Well, those are all of my favorite confessions of love with some honorable mentions. I'd really love to know what your favorite confessions of love are from books. That's it for today, guys. Have a great day. Bye.